Well, guys, it's been a while since we've done one of these. It's almost like I forgot how to be an interviewer or something. But it's interesting. In the time since we've, kind of had this pause, there's been a lot going on. The comic industry is just kind of going through some changes. We're hearing all this doom and gloom on the news. People might be shutting down, all sorts of stuff is going on. But at the same time, there's a lot of new blood, new energy, new creativity kind of rising up to the top. And so it's really fun when you hear about a new company doing new things in new ways. And so today I'm talking to Matthew Medney, who is the publisher and founder of Gungnir Books. And they're doing some pretty interesting graphic novel projects that we're going to talk about right now. So welcome, Matthew, to Comics Are Dope, the podcast.
Appreciate it, BJ. Yeah, we're really excited to chat about it, and as you said, bring new love and creativity to a space that's ever evolving.
For sure, for sure. So I guess I kind of want to dive right in because Gungnir wasn't on my radar. I didn't really know anything about it. I got a sort of pitch in my inbox, and I was like, sounds interesting to me. And then I got these two books. I got Chupacabra, and then we've also got Mutant Cats, two graphic novels. And but what stood out to me, besides the fact that these are cool books, was the packaging. They both came in these really nice, like graphic boxes with the nice purple logo on them. And for a second, I was like, wait, did I get two of the same thing? My bad. And I was like, oh, wait, no. I opened them and there's like this really cool unboxing experience. But it was like just right from the rip. You're like, oh, this is different than anything I've gotten before. And we see online, there's a lot of people like trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to save the comic industry? And there is like a school of thought, like, well, maybe if we kind of adopt more of a European model and move to more graphic novels and trades, like maybe that'll do something, or maybe that'll, you know, uh, breathe some life into things. And I'm wondering, like, if that was a sort of an inspiration for Gunnier, or how kind of how this idea came about.
Yeah, I mean, first, really appreciate the kind words on the packaging and the presentation. We agonized for a long time on how that would all look. So it's great that you enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the French model. As people know, I was the CEO of Heavy Metal, which is a French magazine, Metal Hurlant, and a big student of Mobius and Droulet and Dionnet, and the way that they think about storytelling and the books and everything from like how someone experiences the comic journey. And I feel like the single issue weekly drop is just such a difficult business these days. It's nostalgically amazing. Who
Mhm.
doesn't want a 22 pager that they can easily grade, buy one to read, one to keep type of vibe, all of those, amazing moments with it. But from the economics of running a business, the single issue comic is just it's a mountain that felt to me and some of my partners that was not worth climbing. The mountain that was worth climbing was creating an amazing package story that somebody could read, feel, hold, put on their shelf, and be able to experience the Gungner way. Our sort of kitschy tagline is that if you're gonna cut down a tree, you might as well make it beautiful, right?
Mhm.
And that's why all of our books are hardcover, beautifully bound. They have the box because we want you to love the experience. I come also from the music business. I spent 10 years as a tour and production manager, and you don't go to a show just for the musician songs. You go for the feeling and the emotion that that song gave you, whether the song was first played for you by a friend in a happy time or it helped you in a sad time. But the reason you go to these experiences is because it made you feel a certain way that you wanted to feel again.
Mhm.
That's how we feel about our books because you're going to read it for less than 1% of the time it's going to be on your shelf.
Mhm.
I'd hope that we can create an experience that when you look at the book on the shelf, it gives you that jolt of emotion, almost the same jolt that you feel when you go from listening to a song to hearing it live. You remember reading it, you remember that experience, you remember the fun of unboxing it. All of those things are what we're hoping people will take away from, when it's on their shelf for years after they've already finished reading it, and they just get a little smirk as they walk by it. And that was the ethos as to why we were hoping to do something a little bit different, a little bit more prestige, and something that would be not just a reading experience, but hopefully a lifelong emotional connection to the actual physical product.
Nice. No, there's a word you keep using that I love associating with this, right? The experience. Maybe it's because I also have a background in music industry. Before I was doing this channel, I was a marketing consultant for independent musicians,
Hmm,
and
so cool.
and it was all about like, okay, how can you, find their fans and convert them into customers, but really just kind of build these sort of lifelong relationships. And I would harp a lot on this with my clients, like making sure that you're giving them an experience, right? Like if music is free, they can hear your song anywhere. Like, why would they come to you for it? Why would they buy like a concert ticket? What is it about your band logo that they would want on a t-shirt, right? Like, it's not so much that it's you, but it's like, all right, well, maybe they see somebody down the street and it's like, oh snap, he's got a Rolling Stone shirt on too. Like, now we've got a bond. Like, there's a community that forms around it. But no, that word experience, it's true because it's like you don't just read a comic book. Um, and it's funny because it's like I got into comics through Free Comic Book Day. So, and I'm still a Wednesday warrior. I just wrote in my newsletter yesterday, just about how being a comic collector is just ignoring a billion red flags, right? Like I've got stacks that I had to hide before we started recording because my office is a mess and I've got all these single issues and it's like I got a baby running around. Well, she's not running anywhere. She's a baby, but it's like I got kids, I got pets, and so it's like if I'm gonna sit down to read my single issues, it's got to be like just in this one spot, gingerly take it out of the bag and board, and that's that, right? So I've got this mound of comics stacking up for waiting for the perfect moment for me to read it. And then it's like, next week comes and it's like, I got to add 12 more to this stack. And so, my newsletter yesterday was really just about how it doesn't really make sense for me to be collecting comics this way. Like, at the very least, I should probably switch to digital for like the periodical stuff, and then keep my collected editions for what we've got going on. And I don't know, it's just if I take away the single issues, then what I'm really taking away is the experience of going to the comic shop, the experience of like, oh snap, here's a first appearance. Like I didn't know this character was going to debut. The ads that are in every issue, right? Like, oh, I didn't know there was new M&Ms coming out. Like there's all of this stuff that's a part of the experience of reading comics. And so what I love about this is that if you're gonna not have that experience, then this has to be its own form of special, right? Like, and so I think you replicated that well, like which even just with the unboxing experience. But I mean, looking at this hardcover, like it's beautiful. Like, this is a podcast, but we'll be on YouTube as well. But it's like this Mutant Cats hardcover. There's a spot gloss on like where there's this like mutant slime. And then the Chupacabra, there's also got like spot gloss on the trade dress. But it's I mean, honestly, the books are very different experiences from one another. And so I mean that's on the outside, but then on the inside, right? Like I'm reading through Chupacabra. First of all, I wasn't ready for the sacrifice on page one.
But
But
no one is.
right. But then like you open this up and this almost looks like something that, would be published by Fantagraphics, right? Like just with there's almost like a texture to the art style. I don't know if like how that rendering is done. It almost looks like it's colored with like crayons and colored pencils, but then still inked digitally. I don't know how they achieved that.
Yeah,
It's great.
Kyle Frenrich, Goons and Goblins on Instagram,
Mm,
uh, and colored, and he's special.
wow. And so like looking at this art, is way different from like the sort of pop art nature of Mutant Cats.
And,
Um,
I- and you're touching on something that is really important to us at Gungnir is the way that you tell if it's a Gungnir book is if it is unique to the story. We don't have like a house style
mm,
for each of our books. The we have two other graphic novels coming out this year that we'll be announcing in a couple of months, and those have their own unique style. One of them is a duochromatic, just in red and green.
mm,
And the other one is this incredible painted like cosmic oasis. And it's really important to me that books feel unique to the story that they're telling. Like it is I always say a graphic novel is a 2D film,
mm,
and the art style is the cinematography.
yeah,
So we really try to bring a style to the art that complements the storytelling. As you alluded to, the opening scene in Chupacabra, one of the things that we talked about with it was this like beautiful juxtaposition that the art would be really kind and young and fun, but the story would be really dark and
mm,
they would pull at each other. And we thought that was like a really fun experience.
mm, for sure. So I have to ask, right? Like when sort of uniqueness is the brand, how does that make it? How, I feel like that would make it difficult to sort of market each product, right?
Very difficult.
And so it's like what's the ethos? Like what's the sort of rallying cry when it's time to go and promote one of these?
Yeah, no, as you alluded to, it's very difficult, but my guiding light, my sort of center compass is great art above everything. And if we're gonna go bankrupt, but we made the most unique and coolest books, I'd rather do that than make money doing mundane and run-of-the-mill things. So that's just sort of how I think about it generally, and bless Steve Orlando and Jim Kruger and these other people that are working on the team that also believe in that rally cry. But from a brand standpoint, for getting people behind the books, it's more about, are you looking for an elevated experience, and do you trust us as a publisher to help you find a journey that you'll enjoy? I think something that's we've moved away from generally as an industry, both in graphic novels and in prose, both in small presses to big comic presses to small prose presses to Simon Schuster's and the Shots and the Penguin Random Houses, is the trust in the publisher. We only try to market books based off of the breadth and fame of an author or an artist these days. And as you said, you come from the music business a little bit too. And if you worked in the marketing side, you'd know that back in the early 2000s, it used to be parties that
Mhm.
were what people went to, and then they would discover DJs and acts at those parties.
Yep.
I grew up in New York City, so the girls and boys party at Webster Hall on Friday nights was the jam. And then slowly that evolved into hard ticketed artist only shows.
Hmm.
And I think that took away discoverability of new and exciting talent.
Yeah.
And now we're across the board in music, hard ticket shows. And if you think of, the Brandon Sandersons and the J.K. Rowlings and the M. Night Shyamalans and he's a director, but he's written a few books. Sort of brands that people flock to, or Rebecca Yarros, if we're doing a prose book there, or Tom King, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to these creator brands, and there's no shame on any of them. They're doing an amazing job, and it's incredible. I mean, I just finished reading the second book in the Imperium series from Rebecca Yarros, and I think those are fantastic fantasy books. But it lacks this ethos that we had in publishing as a whole back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then started losing it in the 2000s and 2010s, of people going to Barnes and Nobles and checking out newest releases from a publisher and being like, I have no idea what this is about, but I love fantasy and I love the last book from this publisher, and let me try this book, right? And I think one of the things that we're trying to do at Gungnir is, of course, we want to be a home for established great creators. We have a unnamed project that we're working on with Paul Cornell, who wrote a ton of Doctor Who, right?
Mhm.
And an amazing writer. But we also have a ton of these amazing creators that you've never heard of that we just think have a great story to tell. And we want to build a publishing house where the trust is in we're going to help you find the weirdest, coolest, the most interesting stories, both from a narrative and an art style. And we also do some prose. So, from the prose point of view, too, that you can trust that we're doing that curating for you
Mhm.
and come trust us on the books. And if you like a fantasy book, you'll love Chupacabra. And if you like a toilet humor, IT crowd sort of The Office vibe, you're going to love Mutant Cats. And, we'll create categories that we'll say, if you like this, then like this book that you should trust us is going to be a really amazing experience. And that's what we're hoping to build is the sort of community of people that are looking not necessarily for the biggest name, but for the most interesting story that I think as a whole in an industry, we've we focus too much on the P&L of a specific book and not focus enough on the building of a creative that can create something amazing, but needs that initial first home. And we
Mhm.
hope that first home and that last home throughout their life. And I think to do that, you need to create a community that trusts that they don't need to know the author to be able to experience a book.
You're basically, putting the respect back on the publisher, not even so much respect, but it's like the product is taste, right? Like as you're talking, all I can think about is like my record collection, which is sitting in storage
Exactly.
to make room for this, right? But, I know what I'm getting if I grab a Philadelphia International record versus Motown versus Stax versus CTI or Blue Note, right? And it's like they're all great, they all do different things very well. I guess the only difference in this example is you're not just going to be a jazz outfit, right? Like it's not just, one style of book. But still, it's like if I see this label, if it comes in that box, it's going to be a good time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we do stay pretty focused. I would say what every book is, be it fantasy, be it horror, be it science fiction, is we try to have an underlying idea or lesson or thought process in every story, be it mutant cats through the humor and the dynamics between the corporation and the staff, or in Chupacabra with this. So how deep does the rabbit hole go, and all of the ideologies behind the rich and how they interact. And if you read the book, you'll understand what I mean there. But we're trying to create questions for friends to have across a beer on a Friday night or a mocktail, no judgment, um, on a Friday night after they both read the book, and create the tinder that ignites a really fun conversation. Right?
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that authors in the genre space today are the philosophers of yesterday.
mm,
And books should be the starting point of a great conversation. And that's, if you're asking what that connective thread is, that's the connective thread, is
mm.
that all of our books hopefully spark a conversation between allies, enemies, family, which might be worse than enemies depending on the situation, and let them debate something really fun for an evening.
Man. And so with that, right, like you've talked a lot about, going out and finding creators that you feel like have stories to tell. And there are a lot of creators associated here with Gungnir, right? We've got, you mentioned Steve Orlando and Jim Kruger, but I mean, there's all sorts of people. How are you going about sort of finding talent? And I guess is this like a sort of, I don't know, like partially creator own type thing? Like, what's the draw for a creator to Gungnir and vice versa?
Yeah, we definitely have all of our creators have a piece of everything that they touch. It's really important to us. We think we have one of the most creator friendly contracts in the game. Something that when started this journey just shy of 2 years ago, and I immediately hit Steve up to do this with me. One of the requirements he had was that we would work with his team and my team to create a contract that he would be not just happy to sign, but ecstatic to
Mm,
sign.
mm,
And we spent months sort of fine tuning and thinking through things that worked and didn't work, and we're pretty happy from that point of view. And then throughout the years, I started a company in 2016, coming on a 10-year anniversary, which is crazy to think about. Where I fused music and comic books. When I realized that being on the road 200 days a year aged me 5 years every 1 year, I tried to parlay those skills to another industry, and comics was where I wanted to be. We had first done this comic book for Shaggy,
mm,
for one of his songs with Nicky Jam called Body Good, which is really fun. And we've, been blessed to do a lot of stuff with Live Nation, and most recently with the NFL, with some great players, and with the Rolling Loud Music Festival throughout the years. And through this, we had a community of artists and creators who we collaborated with on those. And those were all, effectively marketing materials and a lot of work for hire. So when we started Gungnir, and I was able to reach back out to some of these guys and be like, hey, there's a path here for you to maybe get some mailbox money, depending on how well some of these books do. I'd love to, tap you again on something that's not work for hire for this big artist, but something that we could own together
mm.
and try to build a product that we're all proud of. And it was a really amazing wave of support from that community that we'd been building for the last decade.
Nice. And so I guess, I mean, you guys have a lot of projects sort of in the pipeline. There's a lot of creators there already. What would you say is kind of like the mark of a Gunnier creative?
What do you mean by that?
So I guess like if you're like just scrolling on Instagram or like, just surfing online, and it's like, what is that make about a creator that you'll see their work and you're like, oh, wait, we should try to do something together.
Yeah, totally. So, weirder the better. I'm a big believer. Can't remember. I wish I'm not. I wish I could quote them correctly because I can't remember who said this. I actually think it was Eminem. If
Mm,
I'm misquoting and it was someone else and they listen to this, I'm very sorry. But I'm pretty sure it was Eminem that said that if you listen to a song for the first time and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, it's not unique enough.
mm,
And I feel that way about creative too. I look for the things that make me uncomfortable because I've never seen it before.
mm,
And if you've never seen it before, that makes you uncomfortable. So, the more unique, the better. And that doesn't necessarily mean unique in all ways. Again, I'm hyped on this, fantasy romance novel that the fantasy elements and the structure of it is just really great from this Imperium series by Rebecca Yarros. But something that I've talked to Steve about with it is the tropes and the constructs are actually not that unique. They're
mm,
relatively standardized, but she does them so well with a couple of unique twists in it
mm,
that makes it really original. So, we're looking for people that whether it's visually is just wow, what is that? I mean, none of the art that we put out feels like any other art,
mm,
especially when you see some of the books coming out. I mean, we announced one of our fall books earlier this year called Aeon, which is at the end of time. The last seven sentient creatures convene at the last black hole to discuss the trials and tribulations of the stardust ancestors they arose from and what to do with the dying universe. And that one I penned with my buddy John Connolly, who's an aerospace engineer, Joe Harris, who's an amazing comic creator, and this amazing artist, Lorenza Palmani, this female Italian artist whose style is the most unique thing I've ever seen. And when I found her Instagram, back in 2019, I'd hit her up and I was like, we have to do a book together. And that's sort of what I look for is like art that like really stops me dead or a pitch that really makes me ponder. Like if I'm like, I need to go sit and look at the stars after I read a pitch. That's
Mhm.
what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that Eminem quote you gave, or hopefully it's an Eminem quote, right? It reminds me of a Rick Rubin quote. He talks about how the best art divides the audience, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's like you might see something that's like, I hate that, but someone else like, I love it. It's like, okay, cool. We got now we have a conversation, right? Like,
100%. To that note, this whole like be it in comics or really prevalent in TV film, there's this thing called four quadrant, where they think that effectively, in layman's terms, means that a film or show is meant for everyone. And
mm,
I think that is just such a slippery slope. I think more so if you're a studio or a publisher, you should create an imprint that has things for everyone if that's what you're aiming to do, but not everything should be for everyone, or then that thing is for no one.
right, right, for sure. Yeah, no, specialization is still needed, especially in this world we're in now, where it's like everything's homogenized. We all get the same information at the same time. There's no like regional music, right? Like unless you're going to like, super small press events, even the comics you get. Like I go to a shop here, it's going to be the same as a shop in South Florida, same as a shop in New York City for the most part. And so it's like we need things that stand out if the experience doesn't.
100%.
So, man, we're vibing here. We're vibing. So, I want to talk a little bit more about these individual stories that are available right now. So for the audience, let's start with Chupacabra. What is the pitch for Chupacabra?
It's my love letter because this is one of the only books that I've concepted and then penned and then produced myself.
Mm,
Uh, you know, and it's my love letter to shows like Wednesday and the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and the old Archie comics that I read as a kid. Uh, I'm a sucker for adventure, archaeology, treasure hunt type stories.
mhm,
So that at its core was what I was going for. And my buddy Eric Bromberg and I, he was working at the studio at the time called Exile, and Exile was looking to develop some new IP, and I pitched it to him, and he loved it. And he was gracious enough to give us the opportunity and the support financially to build out the story. And now it's in development for the film based off of this, which was the larger plan. And I was just like, how do we tell an Alice in Wonderland adventure detective story about a high school kid who uncovers something way bigger than what she thought with a really fun twist at the end?
mm, man. Yeah, like I said, I opened it up, and my viewers know, right? Like I could be a little squeamish, right? I got young kids, and so it's like I tend to keep my reading and also just what I cover like pretty PG, right? And generally speaking, the hard lines for me are like graphic nudity, sexuality, and then like demons, right? Like that's pretty much the lines for me, right? So I opened this book and we're like, check, check, check. But then, you get past this opening sequence and you really do fall in love with these characters, right? Like this girl is just like determined to make a mark on the world. She's like, I'm going to find something great. And have a story about myself in my senior year of high school that just goes down as legend. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I'm like, dang, now I got to see if she uncovers it. Like, you know.
That's great to hear. And yeah, yeah, and that is a big reason that we settled on this art style with Kyle because we knew some of the scenes. There's even like another beheading a little bit later, which is really fun, and some drinking of some blood sacrifices. but we felt like the art allowed for us to do that because it was so kitschy and so fun, and it's not hyper realized in any way, shape, or form. And that sort of creative agency let us be darker with the story while you're looking at it and you're like, is that actually what I'm? Yeah, that is what I'm looking at, isn't it? And
Right.
that was like the hope that we were going for with it.
For sure. No, it definitely works. And I've seen that approach like in different ways, right? One of the books that surprised me last year was Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, where it's like this busy world of Richard Scary looking characters, but one of them's a serial killer, and she's like chopping bodies up and hiding the parts and stuff. Right? It's like, what? I'm watching a teddy bear kill people. I don't get it. And then
Why it's why Chucky worked back in the day.
yeah, for sure. And then I think the other example I'd use would be Stray Dogs from a couple years ago.
Totally. Stray
And
Dogs is a fun one.
I really love that. It's like these Disney looking dogs, find out their new owner is a serial killer because dogs don't have a long memory. So it's like they kind of remember maybe how they got there, and that's about it. Like that's
Amazing.
really cool to use that juxtaposition to and it kind of builds suspense because it's like once you find one thing you weren't expecting, it's like okay, well, what else is gonna happen?
Yeah. Because then you start trusting the team that they're gonna keep bringing you on that roller coaster through the ebbs and the flows.
Right, right. And so, yeah, Chupacabra is definitely, even in my shout out today, I was like, yeah, it's probably not for the kids, but definitely a fun read. And I mean, again, it's one story in one hardcover. It's not like, all right, gotta wait to see what happens in part two, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that about it. And then let's talk about Mutant Cats.
Yeah, Mutant Cats is a fun one.
So Mutant Cats, when this stuff came in the mail, what's funny is I ended up not doing this, but I was like, you know what? I thumbed through both of them, and Mutant Cats just has like this beautifully, like just really vibrant color all throughout. And so I immediately thought like, okay, I'm clearly gonna read this one first. And then I ended up not reading this one first. I read through a bit of Chupacabra, and then I started changing diapers, and it was like, oh wait, I have books to read. But give us the pitch for Mutant Cats because I think I don't know them. I don't think my shout out did it justice, right? Like I just talk about like the anthropomorphic aspect of it, but there's a lot of layers in here.
Yeah, if you like the IT crowd and The Office, which I said earlier, you're gonna love Mutant Cats. It's everything about our world, but everyone's just a mutant cat instead of a human.
Mhm.
And we follow these two sort of scientists, partners, collaborators, Muse and Flux, as they work for Mutant Labs, this sort of Amazon-esque corporation. And you follow them and their team as they flow through corporate espionage and backstabbing and all these things under the layer of them trying to create the cluster, which is a effectively it's an arc reactor if you're an Iron Man fan. That's
Mhm.
what it is. But the thing that happens is every time they take two steps forward, something happens that sends them 10 steps back, and it's just a calamity of errors the whole way. It's as we like to say, and it's going to be cringy, but it's still fun, is a catastrophe. Um, but it really is just wild. And in the first few scenes, the cluster does not work as planned, and it rips a hole in interdimensional space. And as that happens, more issues occur as they're trying to fix this tear in space and time. I don't want to give away any more than that. That's like the first 5 pages, so I'm not giving away too much. But yeah, just crazy, funny, hilarious things, and we really do try to pun it out as much as we can, and it's extremely self-aware. And I think that's what makes it the most fun.
Yeah, you talked earlier just about like the humor kind of being really a vehicle in this book, and it is that right. Like it's I don't I hate to use the phrase stupid funny because it's not that, right? It's not like you're watching Step Brothers or something. But it is like there's just all sorts of little things that just kind of add up to like you just laughing all the time. Like, and it's not necessarily that like the humor is needed for the plot, but the humor definitely helps move you through the story. And it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, we had a lot of fun creating and writing that one. And when Morgan and I, who I wrote that with, decided that we were gonna lean in on the cat puns, I think that really unlocked another layer of fun for the
Yeah,
story.
for sure. So, with Gungnir, how are you guys distributing these books? How can people get their hands on them?
Yeah, so we have an e-commerce store, gungnir That's up and running, and you can order and buy today. And we're actually revamping our merch side. We have a bunch of really cool new shirts and other items that are going to be launching next week. I'll send you some actually. They're really fun. And then for in store, we have some pretty exciting news that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, nice, nice. And so, while I have you here, can we tease anything that's coming up? And
Totally.
all right, what we got?
Yeah, so we have three books that are going to be coming out in Q4 this year.
Okay.
One is a prose book called The Existence Equation, and that is an existence equation, sort of like the franchise title. And the first book is What is the Price of the Stars? And the quick elevator pitch of that is in 2293. College is no longer the biggest decision that every 18-year-old needs to make. They have to decide if they're going to download their consciousness into an android, void of human emotion, but able to travel the stars and meet other species and see the cosmos, or do they stay a biological, know the stars' worth and reach, but they couldn't give up their humanity and they live on an Eden-like Earth for 60 years until they get cold for population control. And that decision of what is worth it for the stars is every 18-year-old's decision at the Institute. And we follow Liam Kerr, a 17-year-old boy, as he goes on his 12-month journey of discovery to decide what type of person he wants to be.
Wow, that's that's a scary. I'm trying to think of like trying to make that decision at that age. Like,
And to me, it's just a great allegory for what I think is the absurdity of everyone putting the pressure on an 18-year-old to decide their future.
uh,
America's like one of the only countries where like it forces kids to go straight into college and decide their track. Most countries tell their 18-year-olds go travel for a year, go see the world, and then come back and tell us what you think you want to do. So this is a huge allegory for that decision-making process. Um, Another one of our graphic novels called Last Breeds, which is that duochromatic story I was telling you about, written by Jonathan Ball, co-created by myself, Jonathan, and GMB. GMB and Jonathan, amazing creatives out of Canada. I worked with them a bit when I was at Heavy Metal and stayed in touch. And for a lack of a better phrase, we want to create asshole Tarzan, and and the story revolves around this guy Bale, who is one of the last breeds of people that didn't eat the Gen Core modified food, the Monsanto-esque modified food. And now you fast forward 16 years and kids' DNA is degrading because of the profiteering that happened with the consumerization of this type of food. And every kid is dying at the age of 16 because their DNA can't sustain life anymore because we kept putting too many chemicals in the food.
mm,
And now this girl, Amelia, shows up at Bale's doorstep, and she's 17, and maybe she's the cure, very World War Z-esque.
mm,
And Bale, in his most fitting asshole Tarzan way, has a bunch of last breed animals. He tames tigers, lions, and bears. Oh my! So in a Book of Eli-esque type way. He takes his herd of alpha animals and marches protecting Amelia from their safe haven in Texas to the last working lab in San Diego. And that's the stories of that journey.
Wow. And so I guess something I didn't touch on, right? Like you mentioned you've got graphic novel projects, but you also got prose projects, and some of this stuff is like the goal of it is like other media as well. Um, with starting this company, right? Like how is it to have such a broad scope, and how do you decide what story for what medium?
Yeah, it definitely has its challenges, obviously, but I didn't want to curb the ability for a creator to put it in whatever medium they thought the story worked best and what we together with them thought worked best. I personally love the prose medium. I think it's amazing. I love it just as much as the graphic novel medium for different reasons, allowing your mind to paint the pictures, and then allowing your mind to look at the art and imagine the video. Both of them have really near and dear places in my heart. So I wanted to. I was a huge Harry Potter fan growing up.
Mm,
Those books shaped my whole world, and same goes with Lord of the Rings. It's a huge Tolkienite. I mean, I can talk about all of the Foundation and H.G. Geiger and all of these amazing authors, but also, early day Stan Lee and Jack Kirby was just like bonkers.
mm,
So to me, I wanted to look at both mediums and see how we could um, find audiences in both. And I'm a big believer that the community that wants to read and engage with the experiences of a book, be it prose or graphic novel, is much larger than that than we think. Even for whatever reason, comic book shops, I don't think represent the amount of readers who want comic books. I think the conventions are probably a better um, gauge of how
mm,
many potential readers are out there.
mm,
And there's no shame on the comic book shops. As you said, I love the feeling of going in to comic book shops. Shout out to Golden Apple. Those are my guys over here in LA. I love them to death. But I think when you see, 500,000 people walk through San Diego Comic-Con and another 500,000 are just in and around the area, you realize that there's a large sum of people that might not enjoy going into a shop, but might buy a book off Amazon or buy a book off your website. And I do think that there's an opportunity to to capture that audience too that loves the culture and loves the experience and goes to the experiences, but maybe wants to be brought to their level on engaging on an actual book.
yeah, yeah, for sure. The audience is definitely bigger, right? Like, cause I've just as an example, right? Like, I go to my local comic shop every week, and besides my kids, I rarely see kids there unless there's some sort of an activation, free comic
Yeah.
book day, or like it's Halloween or something like that, right? But like last weekend, my niece and nephew came over. I gave my nephew like one of those little Marvels comic books, and
Yeah.
so the girls are upstairs playing, and he's just downstairs reading the Hulk. But like I didn't have to teach him how to read the comic, right? Like he's got Dogman and all this other stuff. And like my nieces and nephews, teenagers, they're reading manga. Like,
Hmm.
first of all, like I'd have got punched in the face for reading manga in middle school, but you know, I guess we're in a different world now.
We're in a different world where half the shelves are Batman adaptations in manga.
Right. And so it's like all this stuff is cool now, but the response you get from most adults when it's like, oh yeah, I review comics, they're like, comics, they'll still come out? Like that's a thing still? And so there's definitely a disconnect, but I think it's generational. So like the more you bring these things sort of to the marketplace, whether it's a school book fair or just having a presence online, like I think kids will discover it, people will discover great stories. I guess on that vein, a question I had for you, since we're both sort of music industry alumni, right? Like what pushed me out of the music industry was one burnout, right? Like you mentioned, you know,
Classic.
I was in artist management, and for me, it was like, I've got different morals than other people or whatever, and so it was like for me to manage or to make a living while pushing the type of music that we would promote. It's like I gotta have like 7 artists, and we're gonna be playing like the most small cap, dingiest clubs. We might be doing these showcases where like the show doesn't start till 11, and it's like there's no way I'm doing this with all these kids and still enjoying life, right? So it's like I don't want to be so hands on the scene every weekend and all that. And so that's kind of what moved me into consulting. And then COVID hits, and my whole kind of plan for artists is like, well, let's find your community, and then let's get you like polished up so you can take that on the road and keep, you know, selling live tickets and stuff like that, and just building experiences. COVID hits, small cap venues kind of shut down, and then like when everything comes back, the industry is just sort of remade, and it's festivals. Like everything is like a 1 million seat venue, and you've got these artists going from like their bedroom to Rolling Loud, and that is like the weirdest trajectory ever. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm an old man. Y'all got it. you know.
Oh man, yeah, I I I empathize with a lot of that journey. Doing the tour and production management was a blessing. I got to go to about 55 countries and launch off a bunch of fireworks and pyrotechnics, which I'm forever grateful for that experience. But to your point, it would be a 22-day tour.
Hmm.
You're not really paid great, but you're expected to be on 24/7 because when you're not with the artist, you're advancing that
Right.
next show. And you're going to the venue at 4 p.m. to do the walkthrough. And then you're doing dinner with the artist and with the promoter, and then your show starts at midnight or 1, and then you're back at the hotel at 3. You're on a plane the next day at 10. You're at the next city at 2. Your artist goes to sleep, and you run to the next venue to do your next sound check, and
Right.
it's extremely thankless,
Right.
um, but it's fun, and it's great for a period of
Yeah.
your life,
For sure.
right?
For sure.
And that was for me the thing. And I had always known when I decided to try to get into the music business, and then successfully getting in and doing my thing, that it had an expiration date for me, no matter how well or how poor it might go, because it was not sustainable, and I didn't really have any. I dabbled with being a GM of a record label, and I realized very quickly that um, if I was going to be managing art, it was going to be books, not music.
Yeah. And so my bad, because I stopped midway through my very long-winded question, right? So uh I guess the one thing, when I came into comics, it's like the conversations around comics are very similar to the conversations we would have in the music industry, right? Where publishers are record labels and artists are artists. And it even today there's this whole thing going viral about Marvel underpaying artists and different practices, and everybody's kind of coming forward with their stories. But all that to say, it feels like the music industry, or at least a good subset of the artists in it, have been able to kind of find this a new wave, right? Whether it's being independent or kind of being more entrepreneurially minded, and they're navigating, right? And it feels like comics is maybe a few steps behind that, but it's like that sort of a groundswell is happening. Like, where do you see comics going, and how do you see comics kind of navigating this wave where, well, I guess maybe some of this is just like it's opportunity for like companies like yours to do things differently. So I guess in what ways do you feel like it's important to do that?
Yeah, I think you're touching on something that is a reckoning across all entertainment.
Hmm.
And probably the most prevalent is in music, but this is everywhere. And I'm sure you've heard this term a gazillion times, is from your artists, beep, what is my record label other than a bank?
Yep.
And I think that that is something that we really think a lot about at Gungnir. Like, of course, part of it is paying for the book and then the marketing of it. But if that's the only thing you're bringing, there's going to be tools, there's going to be technologies, there's going to be pathways for creators to mitigate the costs that you're spending to do it themselves. And I believe that most creators, if posed with the option of this publisher's going to pay you great and you'll make good money on it, but you're pretty much on your own to market it and they'll probably not recoup on the book and then you probably won't see any royalties or you're not going to make that much up front because they're going to put their resources into creative ways to create a sustainable business for your book.
Hmm.
I think a lot of artists would rather that path, and that doesn't mean that we pay a page rate and all that fun stuff. But we're not looking to do deals with creators who want a setup where it's going to be nearly impossible to recoup. Our hope is that we recoup pretty quickly, and then we're building an equal 50-50 business with you.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's something that we can monetize for years to come, be it in publishing, be it in merchandising, be it in adaptations. So, trying to create innovative marketing that's not just reliant on the audience of the creator, which goes back to the initial point about trusting us with a young creator. The young creator doesn't have that audience yet. And
Yeah.
that is something that we are working on, is to be able to bring new voices in by creating that community that cares early on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, you guys are certainly well on your way, right? Like, I guess step one, it's really not step one, but step one in any good business is to have a good product, right? And you've got these books, they're really well done, well packaged, well thought out, well executed. And so I guess the rest of it is us telling people about it, right? Like,
That is always, that's always been the crux of it is, we got to megaphone it out there. We got to get people like you and create this community of people that want to take a chance on reading and being part of the Gungnir community, the Odin's army, for the fun marketing slangs that our team has put together. But yeah, we're just excited for people to discover it. When I remember when I was a kid, discovering books like Holes and discovering books like Saga early on,
mhm,
right? Because a lot of people don't realize that Saga, I mean, I might be off a few issues, but like didn't really get the wow that it has now till like issue 15 or 16. Like
mhm,
it wasn't like off the bat.
yeah,
But I remember finding that in a comic shop and being like, "Oh shit, this is fucking sick."
mm,
Uh, and and I want to hopefully be able to be that for some kids today.
for sure, for sure. And so again, we're on the way, right? But the next step in this process is for you guys, the listener, to go out and grab these books to try them out. So Matthew, where can they go again to grab some of these books?
Yeah, so like both Mutant Cats and Chupacabra available at gungnir.books.com. Easy purchase. They're available on Amazon. They're available in some Barnes and Nobles in stores, but on barnesandnobles.com and a handful of your local comic shops. And if your local comic shop doesn't have it, just tell your guy to pick it up, and they should be running through the diamond system on both of those.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, get a special ordered anywhere. It's very cool. Well, Matthew, again, thank you so much. One, for your time. Thank you for sending these so I could check them out because these are really cool. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope everything is super successful. And I'm sure it will be. And we'll be talking soon about these upcoming projects.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem at all. And to you guys out there, go to gugnirBooks.com. Check out the titles available. Check out the merchandise and experiences that'll be up by the time this episode goes live. Stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today.
Comics are dope.
Right.